Bueno, bienvenidos a todos una vez más. Buenos días, espero que estén bien. Am, Bienvenidos a la Feria de Trabajo Virtual presentada por el Clasificado y Empleos Latinos. Si tienen alguna pregunta sobre la feria de hoy, en el chat les estoy compartiendo dos teléfonos para que puedan contactarse con nosotros en caso que tengan algún problema. Y lo estoy poniendo en este momento para que tengan esta información. Bueno, en este momento vamos a seguir con nuestra segunda presentación del día. Acuérdense que usted está en el grupo 1 y si desea entrar a cualquier otro grupo, que sea tanto el 2 o el 3, pueden ver los enlaces dentro del chat y también pueden encontrarlos en superatla.com. Vamos a hablar ahora sobre Network Elevator Pitches and Informational Interview. Pero si tienen, esta presentación va a ser en inglés, pero si tienen alguna pregunta en español, la pueden hacer por medio del chat y con gusto yo la podría traducir. En ese momento les presento a Mónica de Cerritos College, que nos hablará de Networking Elevator Pitches and Informational Interview. Mónica, welcome. How are you? Monica, are you there? Are you there,
Hi,
Monica?
hello, I'm here. How are you?
Perfect, I'm doing great. Monica, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. I'm trying to start the video, but here I am. Great.
So go ahead and you can do start. You can start sharing your screen if you like.
Okay, wonderful.
I'm gonna go on mute and I'm gonna leave you to do your thing.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to talk to you today about networking. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Monica Lee Copeland. I am currently work as Chief Development Officer for Cerritos College Foundation, which means I go after major gifts, raising money so that I can help fund the students and their futures, the students of Cerritos College. My career fundraising total is about 250 million from private equity and nonprofit fundraising. And previously, I've worked for organizations like Dare America, Harris Trust and Savings Bank, Transamerica, and I own my own company for about 12 years where I work for over 20 nonprofits. Really happy to be with you today. Networking is a big part of what I do every day because if you're in a sales or development type career, you have to meet a lot of people in order to accomplish the goal. Because once you have raised funds from one person, that's done and you have to go out and find others. So I am constantly working to build relationships with new people, and so that it doesn't feel transactional. So at the point of time when I do want to ask a contact for something, we have a relationship and they want to say yes. So I just want to get to it because we don't have a lot of time, and I know you all are embarking on your job search. I don't know how many of you are looking for a job because you've lost one or you're just want to transition to a better position. But I think understanding how to do a proper self-introduction and conduct informational interview will either help you kickstart or enhance your career. So the first thing to do is you're at an event or you're sitting in front of someone and they ask you that really big question to tell me about yourself. Or maybe they don't even ask that. People are at a table that you've never met before and everyone is introducing themselves. What do you say about yourself? Do you have a go-to personal statement? And by the way, that's not a long, rambling statement. That's a concise, specific statement that you've taken the time to draft and to test among friends to make sure that it works, that you can vary, that you know by heart. And here's how you work on putting that self-introduction together. And I would encourage you to take notes on this part. And if you have any questions, if you could put them in the chat window, and I will answer them as I go through each part. So drafting your self-introduction. This is something that, may take a week or two to get right. First of all, if you are a recent college graduate, that's within the last 5 years, or you are currently in school, then you mention your education. Otherwise, it's really not very important to talk about, because what's important is your job experience at that point. There is one exception, and that exception is if you've had specialized training. Some occupations require specialized training. For instance, my position, I have earned a credential. It's called a CFRE. That's a Certified Fundraising Executive, and only 3,000 people in the world have it. So if I'm looking for a job as a fundraiser, then it's really important for me to mention that credential, because it distinguishes me from others. So when you draft your self-introduction, you definitely want to mention specialized training if you have it, but to do so in a way that doesn't feel like you're doing a data dump on the person that is listening to you. The other thing for job experience, you need to be very specific. You should not have more than 2 or 3 lines in your self-introduction that is talking about what you are doing at your current job. You want to be sure to use high impact keywords, and that's why it's really important to write this out, and then also to take the time to understand your occupation, and to understand, to do some research about what are the skills that people are looking for in your field, to make sure when you have those 2 or 3 sentences about yourself that you've popped in some. For instance, in my case, collaborative leadership is a really important keyword, because that means that I can work well with other people as I'm leading, take in their ideas. So when I do a self-introduction and I'm talking to someone who might be a potential employer, then I might put in that word. Now, there is a different type of introduction for when you're talking to someone who might help you in terms of helping you network to get a job, or if you're in a position already and you are talking to someone just because you want to build a relationship with them. So as you're thinking about this, do think about your overall objective. You won't have one self-introduction. You'll end up with several. When you talk about your accomplishments, you want to incorporate those into the 2 or 3 lines of work experience. And you want to be as specific as possible so that you outline your achievement. So remember when I did my self-introduction a moment ago, I mentioned to you that I had a career fundraising total of 250 million. That's pretty substantial in the world of fundraising. So that's the biggest highlight, and it was just done simply and thrown that in, so it's not a data dump, so people can understand and take me seriously. If that were only $5 million and I have over 20 years of work experience, then I wouldn't mention it, right? So you want to be very careful about the accomplishment or two that you put in, and make sure that it's a part of those 2 or 3 sentences. The absolute most important part is, what is your objective? And this is the part that varies greatly when you're doing your self-introduction, depending on who your audience is. So you talk about what you are working on now, or what you are looking for. So if I'm talking to someone who's a potential donor to the college, I might say, my objective today is to build relationships for Cerritos College students and find people who want to invest in the future of the college. That might be my objective. Your objective will be based on what your goal is for that individual meeting and your overall objective. And then finally, no one can take you seriously with an introduction unless you have a call to action. What's a call to action? Is what do you want from that contact that you're talking to? So it might be to exchange a business card. It might be for that person to introduce you to people so that you can conduct an informational interview with them. It might be to get together for lunch at a future date, or to have a more in-depth conversation via Zoom or over the phone. So you want to make sure that the very last part of your self-introduction is your call to action. And so right now, I want to know if anyone has any questions about those. And Giancarlo, if you could, if you see any, if you'll alert me and read those, because this is really important for the draft. Otherwise, I'll go on to the next part.
Absolutely. You just keep going, and there at the end, we'll take care of the questions.
Okay, great.
Thank
so
you,
I'm going to go to the next person, where you take the drafting your self-introduction. And that I just talked to you about, I put them here so that we can dig a little deeper. So the first one is the education. So this is Joe Job Seeker, and he's got 3 years of work experience. He just finished his AA degree at Cerritos College. So if you remember in the previous slide, I said that the self-introduction, you only mention education if you are currently in school or a recent graduate. You've got 10 years of work experience, you're going to skip mentioning education. This is what you're jotting down about yourself. And by the way, when you're doing your brainstorming on your self-introduction, you'll write far more than what's here, and then you'll go through that, and you'll cross out the things that are not important, and you'll arrive at the ones that you think are the most important. Don't stop on 2 or 3 lines. Put as much in as possible, and then from that your own brainstorming, reduce it to what's most important. So this right here is the reduction. This is once this Joe Job Seeker has thought about himself and what he's done and what he wants to do and what his objective is. So this is his final analysis, right? So he has specialized training. He's completed a Google Cloud training certification, and he's built some WordPress websites part-time as an entrepreneur. His job experience, he interned at EC Hispanic Media. What better experience could you have for a person with AA in communications? His accomplishments is that one of his website clients, he got their media presence up to 500,000 followers, and it was a startup situation. So that's a terrific accomplishment for him. It's the best of everything that he could mention in those 2 or 3 sentences. And what does Joe want? He wants to find a job in a marketing department of a rapidly growing firm like Google, Facebook, or Hulu, because that would be his dream. It doesn't have to be one of those 3 organizations, but I'll tell you, 3 really magic number when you are trying to give someone an example, and it helps make them specific. So whatever industry you're in, you're talking to that person. You want to pick 3 sample companies. If you're not looking for a specific industry, for instance, if you're an accounting person, then you pick 3 types of companies that you just admire, and you say those names because people will latch on to that, and they'll go, well, maybe not Hulu, but I know someone at Netflix. And so you want to get very specific when you think about those 3 organizations. The reason for Joe that he shows in Google, Facebook, or Hulu is he wants to work for a large organization. But in your objective, you could say that you want to work with a startup. It depends on what you want, because your self-introduction is all about you. Okay, so how has Joe put all this together, all that information? So he's met someone at a round table. He's sitting with them. It's time for him to introduce himself to the table. And he goes, hello, I'm Joe Job Seeker. I recently earned my associate's degree in communications from Cerritos College. I've been interning with EC Hispanic Media the past 3 years and have 4 website clients of my own. My Google Cloud certification helped me take Galaxy Gamer, a startup gaming company, from 10 to 500,000 followers on Instagram. I'm seeking an entry-level position at a fast-paced marketing firm where I can continue to gain experience. Could you introduce me to 3 individuals who work for companies like Google, Facebook, or Hulu? So all of those components are in the self-introduction. And so he's made the self-introduction, and now he's waiting for the other person to say, oh, sure, Joe, I can do this, or I don't know anyone in that area, or whatever it is. And then there's tons of ways where you could vary this as well. So the really important point in a self-introduction is to very quickly be able to articulate who you are, what you're doing, what you want to do, and what you want from the contact. All right, so let's move on from there and talk a little bit about informational interviewing. If you are just sending out applications to jobs that you found on LinkedIn or a job website, you will miss 70% of the positions that are out there. And that's because 70% of jobs are never advertised. The jobs that are advertised are typically the ones that people are having a hard time filling, or if they're looking for something really specific. Most jobs are filled with people who are known to the organization already. So how do you get known to organizations? You go and you do what's called informational interviewing. And that's where you set up a meeting with a potential job seeker. Well, you're the potential job seeker, but you set up a meeting with someone in a career or industry or of a company that you might like to work with, or a person who you know is just, they've got tons of contacts on LinkedIn and they can connect you to someone else. The purpose of an informational interview is not to ask for a job. The purpose of an informational interview is to get connected with as many people as possible. So if you take a minute and you think about your LinkedIn portfolio, and most people get to know you by your LinkedIn portfolio. So if you don't have a presence on LinkedIn, you should have one. It should be well crafted. There should be a really nice professional picture of yourself. And even if you work in an industry where it's a little casual, your professional, a way that you present yourself should always be like you're interviewing, even if it's your social media presence. There are some exceptions if you're an actor or something like that, but most actors I know, even their headshot picture, they choose the one that is the most business professional to put on a LinkedIn, and they might supplement with additional pictures. In any regard, you're going to have a great LinkedIn portfolio. You are going to go out to meet people or start searching LinkedIn for people in your field, and you're going to build up your contacts within LinkedIn so that you can get to over 500 contacts, because then you go up sort of in your presence on LinkedIn, and more people were willing to talk to you. You look more like an expert. So how do you get these? How do you get these informational contacts? First of all, in your community and throughout the Southern California region, there are tons of organizations that offer networking sessions. And there are some at your alma mater if you graduated from college. There are some at different churches. And this is when you get on the computer and you Google and you find ones that are appropriate for you in your field. I can't advise you into the networking events that you should attend because I've been so focused on my own, and I think they would be very inappropriate for most of the people in this audience. Right now, though, you're in a networking conversation. The participants that are here, that you're in this webinar with, are potential networking candidates. And they're not competitors to you. They're people who should be in your network. So a lot of times, if it's possible to connect with people that you've been in a webinar with, if you can see the names of the participants, you can go to your your LinkedIn account, and you can look them up, and you can say, hey, I was in this webinar with you. You do your self-introduction on LinkedIn, and then your ask is, can I connect with you? Okay. For someone more senior and specific, Then in your self-introduction, you're going to say at the close, can you spend 15 minutes or 30 minutes with me in an informational interview? And if they don't know what an informational interview is, you can say, help them and say, I'm not going to ask you for a job, because that will put that person at ease. I want to learn more about you, your career, the occupation, and the industry, because that's the purpose of an informational interview. So let's say that you met someone at a job fair, and you thought that was that person. Obviously, they may have a job there, but you can say, I'm interviewing for jobs, but I think you're a fascinating person. You've done your self-introduction. Your last line is, can I have an informational interview with you, either in Zoom or in person? In person is always better, but we're in a COVID landscape. So they may opt for Zoom. And you want to be very particular about the amount of time that you ask for, because one of the most important do's in informational interviewing is not to go over the allotted time. So let's talk about the must-dos. You've gotten this informational interview. Don't ask for it for the next day when you set up the appointment. If they say yes, push it to like a week out, because you need to prepare. So the first part of an informational interview is research. You need to research your contact. You need to know about them. Most likely they'll have a LinkedIn presence, but you might also want to go on the internet and see if there have been any news articles about them. If you're talking to someone who's been a manager at a decent sized company, then there's media about them out in the world. You want to research the company that they work for. You want to research the occupation and the industry. And so once you have all of this information in your head about them, then you want to make sure that for the interview that your social media presence is up to date. Because as soon as they leave that agreement period, they're going to look you up and say, well, could me meeting this person, because you've asked to meet another professional. So they will have taken the time, most likely, to learn a little bit about you. So make sure that your presence is great, you are typo free, you have a current photo. When you arrive for the appointment, whether it is LinkedIn or in person, you dress professionally. You arrive on time. And I have a big rule. It's not just arriving right at the moment. It's arriving 15 minutes early, even though you may be waiting for them, because then you'll have the opportunity to get a glass of water, go to the restroom, all those type of things. And keep the meeting to the time period that's agreed upon. So if you asked for 15 minutes and they gave it to you, recognize that you might be meeting with somebody who's making 150, 250,000 a year. Time is very precious to them. So if they gave you 15 minutes, make sure you have planned the things you're going to discuss to that 15-minute interval. Now, this is the heart of the informational interview, are the questions. Unlike a job interview, it is your job to ask questions of the contact, because you're the student, you're there to learn. This is more like school, except a little bit less laid back. So you're going to have your most excellent posture. You're going to make great eye contact. As you are listening to them, you're going to be taking notes that you can refer to later. And after this meeting, and if you can within 24 hours, but no later than 48, you're going to send a thank you letter. And I have a big suggestion that you don't send this thank you letter by email. You can, if you've connected with them on LinkedIn, send them a note that I have sent you a formal thank you letter in the mail. Use pen and paper and put together a professional thank you letter and put it in the mail and send it to them. And then this is the most important part. You've done all this hard work to get to know this person. You've made an excellent self-introduction to them. And you've asked them, and this is the most important part of your must-do in the interview, those three questions. Can you refer me to 3 more people in the industry? So every time you talk to someone, if you're getting another 3 people, eventually you're going to have talked to, 300 people. That's after 100 informational interviews. I would say if you do 2 informational or 3 informational interviews a week, you should have a job in 3 months. Because if you're meeting that many people and they're connecting you, so, and someone likes you, when they hear about a job, they're going to contact you. And if you don't ask for that job and you do what you should do in the information interview, that person might go, you know what? I actually have an opening at my company, or my contact at this other company is looking for someone just like you. Let me introduce you to them. And I will tell you personally, almost all of my jobs have come from informational interviewing, not from sending out cover letters and resumes. And I'm not saying don't send out cover letters and resumes. I'm saying you need to do both. So let's talk about what not to do in an informational interview. Absolutely do not bring your resume, because it's not a job interview. You're collecting information. So right there, that's considered pushy or aggressive. Don't arrive late or be unprepared. Do not ask personal questions of your interviewer. You're asking questions related to their education, occupation, career progression, industry, and their company. All right? Whatever your political thoughts are, your religious thoughts are, your thoughts about what work culture should be, you absolutely never disagree with your contact, because that person in their mind who has the ability to hire people and connect you with others will brand you as someone disagreeable. It doesn't matter if you don't agree with their take on the world. That person can still connect you to someone if they perceive you as likable. Again, I mentioned this before, do not take up more time than what is agreed upon. Absolutely, under no circumstances, ask for a job at the informational interview. Your job is to ask for contacts, to ask if you can keep in touch with the person. And you should, about after you send your thank you letter, you should jot in your planner 3 or 4 weeks later, or when something great has happened, to give them a call. For instance, if you, during your conversation, learned that the person worked for a company and later you end up getting an interview for that company, you can call them back in a month and say, I just wanted to follow up and let you know, I hope you got my thank you letter. And they'll say, yes, I did. It was wonderful. That I just landed a great interview, and I know you worked at this company before. Can you help me prepare by giving me some valuable information? Okay. That person, if they liked you and they like, wow, I left that company, I have great contacts, they might give you additional contacts within that organization to help you out, or let you know more about that company, its culture, its hiring practices, why they left. So following up and keeping a relationship, because remember, it's not just about getting contacts, it's about building a professional network. And once you get your new job, be sure to continue networking. Because if you continue networking, opportunities will come to you. You won't be in the position of waiting for opportunities. And so that's the presentation part of creating a self-introduction and how to conduct yourself on an informational interview. And now I'll open it up to questions.
Monica, thank you so much. That was really great information. God, I feel like I took a lot of stuff with me here.
Oh, good.
A lot of good takeaways. So, Monica, there is a question from one of our attendees here. I'm gonna say it in English and then I'm gonna translate it in Spanish. Hay una pregunta de uno de los asistentes. Voy a hacerla en inglés para Mónica y de ahí la voy a traducir también. Okay, here's a question. Is it okay to go to a company and talk to the HR and just leave my resume for future positions? Or is it something that you not recommend?
So I want to make sure I'm understanding the question. It just says during the informational interview to stop by HR.
It says just here, is it okay to go to a company and ask to talk to HR? Just to leave a resume for future positions. So let me translate this question real quick, if you don't mind. La pregunta que le están haciendo a Mónica es si es que está bien ir a recursos humanos para dejar su currículum para que la puedan considerar para futuras posiciones. ¿Es algo que usted recomienda o no? Okay, go ahead, Mónica.
Okay, so first of all, I don't know HR departments or interview processes where they say come by or drop by unsolicited. And this is why informational interviewing is very important. When you are applying for a job, you'll be submitting your resume with the cover letter, and the HR person has that. So this process we're talking about is not that. This process is networking with people who are out in industry, who are currently working, and you're setting up meetings with them to build a group of people that are a part of your professional network. And so that person, I'll give you an example. Martha Della Torre is the founder and CEO of EC Hispanic Media, right? Say I didn't know her. I didn't know EC Hispanic Media, but I was at a Latino job fair and I saw her and I did my excellent self-introduction. And I said, could you introduce me to people at these type of companies or give me an informational interview? And she said, yes, I'm happy to give you 15 minutes of my time. That's what this is about. This is about building relationships with people who may be able to help you because they have influence. They can help you by introducing you to other people. A part of finding a job is not just getting a job. It's building a network of people in your career. I can tell you my professional network has about 5,000 people in it right now. So if I was looking for a particular position, I wouldn't just be sending out cover letters and resumes. I would call the people in my network one-on-one and talk through the ones that are most salient to the job search that I want to conduct and ask, because they've known me, they've met me, I've kept in touch with them. And so then they are more likely to help me by introducing me to my target companies. I hope I've answered your question.
I think so. I think a lot of people, the person just said, yes, you did.
Okay.
So Monica, in today's climate, employment climate, there's a lot of people that don't have jobs. What would be your recommendation for someone that's looking outside their network, let's say, for a job? What would be the approach?
So then I want you to Google roundtables and networking clubs. There's tons of networking clubs. And again, I can't refer you to specific ones because the ones I belong to, you have to be C-level or above because they're applicable to me. So if you Google networking clubs or meetings in your industry, you'll find those and you can meet people that way. You go to job fairs, you can meet people that way. Do remember that other people looking for jobs, they work for companies, and some of them may work for companies that you're interested in. So you can also network from the job searchers. I'll tell you a personal story about me. I went through a really big divorce, and the reason I closed my company is for my children. I wanted to move to a different community. So I closed my company. I knew no one in the community that I lived in. And I didn't have a position at the moment, but I had a great career and experience. And all I did for 6 months was go to networking meetings and clubs and introducing myself and going out and saying to people, can I take you to lunch? Now, if you don't have a lot of money, you may not be able to take someone to lunch, but can I meet you for coffee? And so if you ask the person for an informational interview, then you're responsible for the cup of coffee. However, the person with the job almost always picks up the tab. Okay, so you shouldn't worry about that. What you're getting for that $5 is a chance to talk to that person and understand your industry, occupation, and the companies that they work for better. And the job I have now at Cerritos College was a result of a combination of networking and also going through the traditional process. And the two jobs I had before that were 100% networking. I never brought a resume ever. They never saw my resume. I did informational interviews, and one was Clark Financial Services Group. They were looking for a vice president of communications. I have a fundraising and marketing background, and I met the CEO of the company over a cup of coffee, which I bought. And he goes, you know what? I really didn't think of having a communications person, but it really would help my company. Why don't you just work for me? It was just, I had maybe 20 informational interviews in a 6-week period, and that one, it resulted in that. The person offered me. And so then I met them formally at their company. I brought a resume, never even looked at it, had a hiring package for me when I started. So this is a hard climate, but there are jobs available. And a lot of jobs are in the hidden job market. I'll tell you another strategy too, that if you know that that you've got an informational interview with a person, and you know that they have a position at their company that would be a fit for you. I mean, a fit and not a stretch. You could ask them. You can't ask them for the job, but you could say, what is the best way to apply for positions at your company or similar companies? And they'll tell you. Sometimes they may not, because big companies have multiple departments. They may not even be aware that the position is open. And you can certainly ask, while you can't ask for the job, you can certainly ask, can you connect me to more people at your organization? So that wouldn't be a company of 50 employees or less, but if you're working for one of the big organizations where they have thousands of employees, when you ask, if you've gotten, let's say you're sitting with someone at Hulu, and that person is in accounting, but you really want to work in communications. They may not know anyone in the communications department, but you can say, can you be a connector for me within this or within Hulu? Can you, and then they'll say yes or no. You can hope for yes. They'll say yes or no. That's the question. That's one of the questions you can ask them while you're talking to them or in your self-introduction. And I hope that helps. I want to say there's no easy way to find a job. Finding a job is a job in itself. And so you have to set a lot of goals for yourself, how many cover letters and resumes you're going to send each week, how many informational interviews you're going to have each week. And I do believe in the numbers. If you do the numbers, you will find a job. The other thing is that the unemployment office, most people aren't aware of this. They have free job training that's pretty specific when you go in, and they have networking groups. I did a course for free that would have cost me about $15,000 for unemployed executives when I closed my company, even though, because I wasn't getting unemployment business because I closed my company. I wasn't entitled to any, but I went and I used all the free services. And those people meet with employers all the time because those employers are listing the job there, and they have networking groups. They also have this really great class, which actually tells people how about the modern job market. Most people don't realize that no one reads your resume. If you're at a big company, the resumes are scanned by equipment that looks for keywords and then ranks you. So that's what HR gets. If you're talking about a company of a few hundred people, maybe 2,000 people apply for that job. So you need to format your resume the specific so it can be read by the scanners. Make sure you have as many keywords, and they teach you that at the unemployment office. So I would go file with the unemployment office for the career placement services, get all the free training that you can get while you're unemployed, because that's also a part of it. to use the time to work on your skills, but more importantly, take those classes that learn so you learn how to format your resume. And now there's no one resume. For every job, you're going to vary the resume for that position, and they'll teach you about that. And I hope I
Monica,
answered that question.
I think you did. Monica, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So perfect segue. We were talking about resumes. We have a question here. Should I include a photo on my resume? And we only have 10 minutes left, and there's still a couple more questions. So
Okay. All right. Absolutely do not put a photo on your resume. However, if you don't have a job, you don't have a business card, and you absolutely have to have a card for networking. So do make a networking card, and you can put your photo on that. There are plus and minuses, and so I'm just going to talk about this. As a biracial woman, and knowing that people discriminate, I have two types of cards: some with my picture on them, and some not. There are times in my life where I apply to jobs where I know that most of the interviewers will be male, and that having a woman's name doesn't help me. And so then I've used my initials, ML Copeland, because my name is Monica Lee, ML Copeland. So they don't know that I'm male or female. You have to play that in the way that makes sense for you, but I would not put a photo on a resume because you're not an actor or an actress. It's just not, it's not appropriate. It's not about what you look like, it's about your skills, accomplishments, experience, and education.
great, thank you. Here's another question from another attendee. How early should I arrive? And I think you answered this question earlier.
Yeah, I would say 15 minutes early. Just because you're in the space 15 minutes early, that doesn't mean you announce yourself 15 minutes early. So it depends on, like, if you're meeting at a coffee shop, then you're there 15 minutes early. You have a chance to calm down, to be prepared, to get your water, to go to the restroom, because they may have only given you 15, 30 minutes of time. You don't want to waste it, right? You also don't, if you're meeting someone at a restaurant or a coffee shop, you don't sit first. You're standing at the entrance waiting for them. You should know what they look like because you've seen their profile on LinkedIn. And by the way, for the person previously who asked about the photo, that's where you put your photo, is on your social media, if you want to, right? Now, there was a person I know, she was a storyboarder. That was her trade. And so she didn't use a photo, she used an illustration of herself that she illustrated. So that helped her get a lot of work. But your photo, the social media is an appropriate place for that.
That makes absolute sense. And you know what? Here in LA, take your time because parking's also an issue, right?
Yes. And
You want to make
also,
sure.
I will say this. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. There's another question, so I just want to make sure that I get to all of them. Another attendee had asked, what types of questions should I ask when employers ask if I have any questions for them? I guess I understand people get anxious when they ask that question.
Okay. So this is what I'll say, because our topic is informational interviewing. Informational interviewing, they may ask you a follow-up question, but really, this is not a job interview, an informational interview. I cannot stress that enough. So it's your job to ask the questions, and they should be well researched. If you do a Google search by your industry, for instance, for me, if I put in fundraising executive interview questions, there'll be tons of examples of interview questions. And then if you do research on the person you're talking to, then you have questions. So you can find the questions that the interviewer would ask. You can find the questions that you, the job seeker, would ask for an actual job interview. But the best thing for an informational interview, if they're asking you a question, it's about yourself. So know yourself. If you're interviewing them, you've already prepared your questions because you've done your research about them. The questions are about them. So, for instance, you might ask them, how did you get to be in the position that you're in today? That's pretty inspecific because I don't know the industry you're talking about. I don't know the background of this person, but if you can demonstrate that you've done research, for instance, if I can say, Martha, if we're going to Martha Del Vittore, Martha, I know that you made a big switch in your career, you're a CPA, to running your own company. What made you want to take that gamble? Well, she knows, wow, I read her background. I know she has a CPA. If you ask, what was it like to attend a person's college and how did it prepare you for a career? Or, if you understand your industry, for instance, in fundraising, I may say, raising money online has become a really big, important part of today's fundraising game. Uh, what strategies do you know about that can make a person more successful, or who are the best vendors? I mean, there is no, there are no generic questions if you want to get the job. There are
Yeah,
no generic questions.
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Getting to know yourself is important. Getting a job is not just about a piece of paper, your resume. It's about presenting yourself in the right manner. Monica, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I think we've all learned a lot from you today. I think one thing we can take away is we need to be prepared because opportunity can knock at any time. You don't know who you're talking to unless you're really prepared.
Yes. Can I leave you with one thing? My
Absolutely.
first job, I got my first informational interview as a senior at Northwestern University in Illinois. I was a waitress at a five-star restaurant, and I did not know that people who were my regular customers owned one of the biggest banks in Chicago. They saw me walk into the restaurant in a suit, and they're like, "Why are you dressed in a suit?" And I said, "Oh, I went to a presentation on this bank." And they said, "Do you know we own the bank, Monica?" And I did not know. They said, "We won't give you a job, but we'll help you get an interview." And that was that. So you
That's
always have
amazing.
to be prepared. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, once again, Monica, thank you so much for being here with us today. Couldn't thank you enough. And for everybody else, I'm gonna just take over from here in Spanish. Thank you so much. I'm gonna take over the screen, Monica, if you don't mind, and we'll talk. We'll talk later.
All right. I wish everyone good luck on your search.
Thank you. Thank you. Ok, bueno, muchísimas gracias a todos por haber escuchado a Mónica, realmente buenísima información. En un par de días vamos a tener esa presentación para todos ustedes ya traducida para que la puedan verla una vez más. Ahora mismo vamos a tomar una pausa. Antes de tomar esa pausa, quiero repasar el siguiente enlace que vamos a tener, o el taller, va a ser el tema de microcredenciales y certificados, cómo una clase puede mejorar drásticamente su potencial de empleo. Este taller va a ser a las 10:30. Si es que prefiere atender otro taller, tenemos el grupo 2, 3 o 4. Pueden ver los enlaces en el chat, los voy a poner una vez más ahí. Y también nos puede visitar en superatela.com. Una vez más es superatela.com. Gracias y nos vemos en unos minutos. Solamente un recordatorio para todos los asistentes. Estás en este momento en grupo 1. El próximo taller va a ser microcredenciales y certificados, como una clase puede mejorar drásticamente su potencial de empleo. También tenemos 3 grupos más. El grupo 2 a las 10:30 va a ser todo sobre liderazgo, cómo convertirse en un supervisor rápidamente. Grupo 3 es consejos de comunicación, si el inglés es su segundo idioma. Y grupo 3, Jafra presenta sé tu propio jefe desde casa. Estos enlaces están en el chat, si es que quieren accederlos, pueden hacerle clic y los va a llevar a ese taller. Nos vemos a las 10:30, aproximadamente en 4 minutos, con microcredenciales. Nuestro invitado es Freddy Rodríguez y Juan Manzano de Bakersfield College.